Microsoft Word is a word processing program, and basically what that means is that you can write and store your text within the program. To open up the program, go ahead and click on the Start button and find it, and then click on it to open it up. But instead of doing that every single time, I added it as a shortcut to my desktop that I can open up with a double click, or add it down below on the taskbar that you can open it up in a single click, like I did with Excel 2016. And if you want to learn how to do that, then I recommend that you watch my Windows training video on shortcuts. In any case, let's go ahead and hover over. You can see that arrow pointing to the big W. That arrow means that it's a shortcut to the program. And when I hover over it, it gives me a pop-up telling me the purpose of the program, which is to create beautiful documents, easily work with others, and enjoy the read. I'm sold. Let's go ahead and double click to open it up. And it takes me to the Start screen, where I can go ahead and start working on a recent document over on the left-hand side, or use one of the templates over on the right-hand side. First of all, the most recent documents here, when I hover over it, gives me a pop-up, the address where the document is, or where it was last when I was working on it, because it could have been moved. And if it has been moved, if it doesn't open up because it says it's no longer there, and you don't want this there, go ahead and give it a right-click, and you get a list of options, and the least of which is to remove it from the list, and it's gone. And then if you want to keep it there, so when you're opening up a lot of documents, because it's not the most recent one, that it rolls off, then go ahead and hover over it, and then click on the push pin. And you can see now it's pinned, so it'll always be there no matter how many other documents you've recently opened up, until you go ahead and unpin it, in which case if it's not the most recent one that you opened up, it'll start bumping down until it rolls off. In which case, if you want to open it up, then you got to go hunt for it, click on Open Other Documents. And then over to the right, you got a list of all the templates, the least of which is the blank template. But if you want to start with something that's already been worked on, that you want to spend a little time making it yours by editing it or changing a few items in it, you can go ahead and find a template. Some of them are fancy, like this one. If you're like, I like that, I'm creating a flyer, click on it, replace some of the text with something that's proprietary to your event, and then save it. But to keep it simple, we'll scroll back up and click on Blank Document. And so that's what's going to happen every time you open up Microsoft Word, is it'll take you right to the Start screen, unless you want to change that. So when you open it up, it takes you right to a blank template here, and I'll show you how you can do that in the next training video. But once you open up a template, either the blank template or any other template, this is the default view in Word. And let's go ahead and go over it by starting up at the top and going from left to right, and then top to bottom. First of all, in the upper left-hand corner, you have what's called the Quick Access Toolbar. It's a tiny toolbar because I only have 1, 2, 3 commands on it. And it's called the Quick Access Toolbar because you can quickly access anything on it in a single click. Like this command, all you have to do is go ahead and click on it and it'll save the document. And you can see in the pop-up, you can use the shortcut keys Control-S. And I'll show you how you can customize that by adding more commands or removing commands from the Quick Access Toolbar in a later training video. And then over to the right, you have the title bar. It has the title of the document. Document 4, that's generic. When you save it, you can go ahead and rename it and call it whatever your document's about. Like if it's about pumpkin pie, that's a good recipe. And then you can go ahead and rename it and call it My Tasty Pumpkin Pie. And then you have the dash, and that's the name of the program in case if you forget you're in Word. And then you got some other options. You can sign in to the cloud. You also have the ribbon display options. We'll cover that. And then the window operating options for this window, like to minimize the window, restore down, or close out. And if you want to learn more about the window operations, you can watch my Windows training videos on that. And then down below that, you have a list of all commands on what's called a ribbon. And it's this big, long thing here. Like, for example, you've got the Home tab, the more popular commands. And when you come down here, you have within that tab groups. And it's separated by these thin lines here. And like on the clipboard group, you can cut, copy, and paste. And if you want to work on the font, like when you type in some text, if you want to change the font type, like instead of Calibri, maybe Times New Roman, the font size, make it bold, italics, underline, change the color, that's the font group in between these two lines here. And if there's more commands than what it can squeeze in there, or commands that aren't as popular, then you've got in the lower right-hand corner this little tiny arrow, which is called the Expandable Dialog Box button, because when you click on it, it expands and opens up a new window. And for the most part, it contains all the same commands that you see here within the group, in addition to these other commands here that, aren't as popular or not as used as often, like the strike-through effect. notice down below in the preview, it's got body, that when I check it, it puts a strike through it. So if that's what you want to see, then go ahead and select it, click OK, and whatever text you have selected, it'll have a strike through it. I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. And so that's the Home tab, the more popular commands broken up into groups so you can recognize which group you want to work in, like for your font, paragraphs, or styles. You have the other tabs here that are broken up. Instead of just working on the text, you can insert things. Like what type of things? Well, it's broken up into groups like tables, illustrations, that includes pictures, charts, shapes, or you can do videos, links, comments, and others. Now, there's going to be some tabs that you won't see now that will come in later on, like when you're working on a picture. It'll have a tab up here on the ribbon called the Contextual Related tab that's related to what you're working on. So it's got some proprietary commands that will only work when you're working on that object or that image. And that will pop up for you to go ahead and select and click on to be able to see some of the commands you can work with when working on, like for example, an image or a picture. Now, all of these tabs here will keep you in what's called the front stage view, working on the blank document down below, except for the first tab, the File tab, that when you click on it, it wipes it clean, and you go behind the scenes, or what's called backstage. Think of it like a theater. You have a bunch of things going on behind the scenes to make the front stage look good or operable when the actors are playing out their parts. So behind the scenes, you've got options. Options where you can go ahead and change, well, the look of your environment. So if you don't want the top bar here, let me go back, which by the way, if you want to go back to the front stage, you can click on that back arrow. If you want the top bar or the environment not to be in blue, you want it to be in white, or see what other colors there are, you can go ahead and change that with the options. As well as other things, when you click on the File tab, you can go ahead and print, share it, export it, things that aren't directly related to what's in the document that you're working on, but the way that you want to handle the file, or to be able to customize your environment, or even, like I said, to print it off. Let's go ahead and click on the back arrow to go back, and that's the File tab. When you go back, it goes back to the last tab that you were on before you went backstage to the File tab. And the default tab, or the Home tab, the more popular of the commands, is the Home tab. And then down below that, well, you may not have it turned on, but I've got my horizontal and vertical rulers. If I want to see those, you can go ahead and click on the View tab. And so what we're looking at here, the default view is the Print Layout view, which, if it doesn't include the rulers, you can go ahead and go to the Show group, and you can see it's checked. If I uncheck it, it's disappeared. Check it, it brings them back. Let's go back to the Home tab. And then down below that, you have your blank document here, where you can go ahead with the cursor flashing, just start typing in your text. And then you can click and drag the scroll bar down, so you can go down to the bottom of the document and see how much room you have before you go to the next page. Now, how many pages are in this document? Well, you can look down below in the status bar, and you can see right here, let me get the pointer out of the way because that's annoying. You can see just below it, I'm on page 1 of 1, so I only have one page within the document. And that's the status bar. That, in addition to the number of pages that you have within the document, the section that you're in, and also the number of words, and you can hover over these others, like check for proofing errors and recording a macro. And then over to the far right on the status bar, you have the different view options. The default is this one right here, the Print Layout, as we saw in the View tab. But you can also do Read Mode and also Web Layout, and we'll talk about those later. And then you have the Zoom feature. Like if you notice up here in the font group, you have the font size, which is 11. If you want it to be that size when it prints off, but you want to be able to make it bigger on your screen here, then why not go ahead and click and drag this to zoom in. And I'm now zoomed in at 200 and, well, let me move my mouse, 292%. So wow, I'm really in there, aren't I? And I can go ahead and click on the zoom dialog box, the 292, to bring it up and say, look, I don't want to zoom that close. I want to go back out. You can go ahead and change it here, or just go to page width, and it just fits the size of the screen here. So when I click Okie dokie, it's at 114%, not exactly 100% because my screen's just a little bit bigger, or the resolution, to fit my screen. So when I click Okie dokie, we're back to where we started. A few things I want to show you that I think you'll find helpful when it comes to customizing your Word environment is, first off, the status bar down below. If you don't want to see some of the stats on there, you want to hide them, or better yet, you want to find out what other stats are available to add to the status bar, go ahead and right-click anywhere on it, and you get the shortcut menu of stats that are available. And those that are checked are either displayed right now or will be displayed when you do something that will display it. Like, for example, caps lock. When I click on that and it checks it, and I click off, it doesn't add it down below or it doesn't display it until I hit the caps lock key on the keyboard, and then it says, okay, your cap locks is on. Go ahead and hit that key on the keyboard again and it disappears. Now to go ahead and get rid of that, let me right click again and deselect it, uncheck it. So when I hit the caps lock again key, it won't display it down below in the status bar. Let me click off to get rid of it. Next is the Office theme. Now the Office theme right now is colorful, meaning that when I open up an Office application like Word here, its proprietary color is blue. When I open up Access, it's going to be red, PowerPoint orange, and so forth. So that's what's called the colorful theme. If I want to go ahead and see what other themes are available, then let's go ahead and go backstage, click on File, go down to Options. The General category or tab is selected by default. Come down here to personalize your copy of Microsoft Office. Notice it's not Word, it's Office, so whatever you do in this section, it updates all the applications in Microsoft Office. Again, Excel, Access, Outlook, including Word here. So if I want to change the Office theme so it's not colorful, or displays that proprietary color, blue for Word, and green for Excel, and so on, then click on the drop-down arrow and hooey, look at all them choices. Well, for the sake of this video, let's choose one, white, and then click Okie dokie, and hey, it updates it to white. Well, except for the Backstage File tab and the Share button. Let's see if it updated in all the other Office applications, or we'll pick one. Like down below, I've got my Excel shortcut. Click on that. Is it white or green? It's white. And vice versa, when I do in another Office application as far as updating the Office theme by going Backstage, File, down to Options, General selected, come down here to personalize your copy of Microsoft Office and change it. There it is. All the Office applications are in white, so now I'm going to put them all back to colorful and click OK. So it's colorful for Excel, proprietary color is green, close out, and for Word is blue. Let's go ahead and go backstage again, because in that same section, down to Options, again General, personalize your copy of Microsoft Office is the username and initials. Now, I recommend that you update this, because if you leave it the default name, which might be the name of your computer, like Dell or HP, that when you create a new document, it's going to have that name as the author. So if you want it to be your name and also include the initials, then go ahead and update that. It's also tied to comments, so when you insert or edit a comment, you'll have your name tied to it, and others vice versa. When they edit or insert a comment, you can find out who did it. That is, if they updated and personalized their copy of Office. And also, it's used to identify you when sharing the document to say, hey, this is Kurt's document. So go ahead and update that. And while we're here, let me come down to Startup Options. And down below, checked, is Show the Start screen when this application starts. As you recall in the first training video, when I opened up Word, it showed me the startup screen, and it didn't go right to a blank Word document. Well, for me, pretty much any time I open up Word, I'm going to be creating a new document. I don't need to see the start screen. So let me go ahead and uncheck that. And also let me go to white, because for me, I don't like the white text against a dark background. I prefer dark text against a white background. So for all of the Office applications, I'll have the white theme and click Okie dokie. Of course, it updates it to the white background. Dark text stands out a little bit more for me. And then when I go ahead and close out of here to open up Word again, it won't go to the start screen, but go right to a blank Word document. Let's go ahead and open it up, double click. And there we go, no start screen. Next, when it comes to opening or saving your documents, if you have those commands on the Quick Access toolbar, well, we've got one. I don't have the open, which I'll show you how to add in a later training video, but when you click on Save, for example, it takes me backstage. Now that's fine if I want to go ahead and save it to the cloud, but when I want to save it to this computer, that gets annoying because, well, I can go ahead and come over here to the recent folders that I was in if I want to save it to that folder and click on it to go to the folder. Or I can go ahead and click Browse, and it opens up the Save As window. Anytime you're saving a document for the first time, it'll open up the Save As window. Well, in this case, it goes backstage first, and then it opens up the Save As window. So I can go ahead and save it on my computer, find a place to save it. But if I want to bypass that and just go, look, open up the Save As window, save me a click and not have to go backstage first, because for the most part, I'll be saving it to my computer, and I don't want to go backstage. Then, let's go ahead and come down here and go to Options and set the options for when it comes to saving. and then come over here and check Don't Show the Backstage when opening or saving files. So when I click OK, then I click Save, it doesn't go backstage, it goes right to the Save As window. I save myself an extra click, and that makes all the difference in the world. In any case, while we're here, actually, when I save the document for the first time, it'll perform a Save As, and it'll ask me 2 questions that we'll cover in a later training video. Where do you want to save it, and what name do you want to give it? Because there's the generic name here, in any case. Where do you want to save it? Now, by default, it wants to save it in the Documents folder every time I save it. Well, for the most part, I want to save it on my desktop. And then from time to time, I'll navigate over here and choose maybe in my Videos folder or Downloads or whatever. But for the most part, I want to save it on my desktop, and I don't want to have to come over here and click on the desktop in the navigation pane every time I want to save it to the desktop. So, let's go ahead and click Cancel and set the options for saving it to the desktop and not the Documents folder by, again, going backstage, down to Options, and select Save, and come over here to the default local file location. So you can see right now it's always going to save it to the Documents folder, and it's coming from the C drive to the users. I'm logged in as training into the training documents folder. So just go ahead and click Browse and say you want the desktop. Choose whatever folder you want to save it into, like maybe the exercises folder on the desktop. I double clicked on it, clicked OK. Now it goes from the C drive to the user logged in as training to the desktop, and on the desktop in the exercises folder. You can do it that way, or if you want, I want to go back to my desktop. I don't want it to go into the exercises folder. Well, let me just go ahead and click in there and hit the backspace key so I can get rid of the exercises folder. So when I click Save, it goes right to the desktop. You can do it that way. And then go ahead and click OK. So when I click Save, it doesn't go to the Documents folder, but right to the desktop. Oakley dokley. Let me go ahead and click Cancel. And then finally, let's go backstage again, File, down to Options, to the Save category or tab. And by default, it wants to do an automatic recovery save every 10 minutes. In other words, what's going to happen is that if I'm not saving my document every 10 minutes, it'll do an automatic save for me. So if I'm like, that's too long, you can go ahead and set that down so it automatically saves every minute. So if something happens, then up to that minute, you got your document saved for you. And I'll show you in a later training video how you can recover those unsaved documents that it was saving for you, at least up until, if I do it down to every minute. But yeah, I'll go back to every 10 minutes. In any case, whatever works best for you. To customize the Quick Access toolbar, like adding or removing commands, you can do it one of many ways. One way is to click on the corresponding drop-down arrow, get a list of more popular commands here, and you can see the ones that are checked and the ones that are currently displayed on the Quick Access toolbar. So if I want to get rid of it, just go ahead and deselect it, and it's gone. Then to add it, click on the drop-down arrow, and go ahead and select it. Now it's back. This time, though, it's at the end of the commands here, not at the beginning. I'll show you how you can reorder that in just a minute. Go ahead and click on it again. You can add more, or if you want more commands, then go ahead and click on More Commands. It takes us backstage, opens up the Word Options window with the Quick Access Toolbar tab selected. You get a list of your popular commands, and then the list of those commands that are currently on the Quick Access Toolbar. Now you can access it that way, or the Word Options window can also be accessed backstage, File, to Options. There you go, Word Options. You just have to come down here and select Quick Access Toolbar, or better yet, close out. And when in doubt, I tell my students, right-click, because chances are when you right-click in the shortcut menu, you'll find what you're looking for. So right-click, and do we find Customize? Yes, we do. The Quick Access Toolbar. Go ahead and click on it. Opens up the same window, takes us right to the tab, Quick Access Toolbar. Keep saying that really fast, and you can see we got a list of popular commands. So from here, we can go ahead and scroll down and find maybe a command that we could use, like paste, double-click, maybe quick print, double-click, or you can go ahead and select one and click on add. That's long and boring. Double-click works for me, but if it doesn't, then go ahead and click on add, and also you can double-click over here to remove it, or select it and click remove. And then if you want a list of more commands at what you see here, or all the commands, click on the drop-down arrow and say all. And it's sorted numerically first and then alphabetically. So if I want to be able to add a command like print preview, then let's go ahead and click and drag the scroll bar all the way down to the P's. And there we go. print preview and print. That sounds fun. Double click to add that over to the right. And whatever else suits your fancy. Paste entire cell. Ooh, that gets a little bit more technical. In any case, let me scroll all the way up to the top because I want to show you that you got the separator command. What this does is it gives you more space or separation between your commands. So that way you don't accidentally, like I do, when I'm in a hurry, I come up here and click on a command and I overshoot it and I click on another command and it was too close, so oops, I have to undo this and I don't get right on it. So add yourself some separators or space by double clicking on it, maybe quite a few times. And then to reorder this so the separators are not all at the end because top to bottom is left to right. So undo is the top, undo is at the far left. So if I select save and click up, up, that's now at the top, so it's going to be at the far left after I click OK. And as far as the separators, maybe I want to go ahead and add one between redo and open, and then another between maybe print preview and print. And actually, let's do 3 so you can see what it really looks like when you got some gappage there. And then go ahead and click okie dokie, and hey, look at that. You see the separators? They're thin little lines, so you can use them to give yourself more space between the commands so you don't accidentally click on one that's so close to the other, or you can use it to separate and group, like maybe this is your cut, paste, and copy commands grouped off from other commands by these separators. And then to be able to remove some if you made a mistake here without going backstage to the word options, right click to customize quick access toolbar, you can, in that right click, remove from the quick access toolbar whatever you right clicked on. So I better try it again because I don't know what I right clicked on. Let's right click on this separator and remove it. That one, remove it. In fact, let's right click on that command, remove it, and it looks pretty good. Now, other ways you can add commands to the quick access toolbar is from the ribbon. If you don't want to go backstage and you see it right there, like B for bold, because maybe you're going to be on another tab working there and you don't want to have to keep going over to home to get to the bold command. So instead, let's go ahead and right click on it to add to the quick access toolbar, and there it is. Or if you want to add an entire group, just go ahead and find a blank area within the group and right click to add to the quick access toolbar. Now when you add that to the quick access toolbar, you can see it's using this image right here, the center line, but when you hover over it, it says paragraph formatting. So what it's doing is it's representing the entire group, because when you click on it, you get the group. It doesn't center a line, it's just a representation of the group. So then you can come down here and you can see all the commands that are in the paragraph group as you see them here. Cool. And then finally, new to Office 2016 is the tell me what you want, what you really, really want help field that you can click in there and type in what you want to find. Like if I want to be able to find the close command, C-L-O-S-E, close the file, there it is. Now you get other options here, but we'll talk about that in a later training video. But as far as commands go, if you want to add that to the quick access toolbar, and it's quicker for you to go ahead and type in the name of the command than going backstage or clicking on some tabs to try to find it, type it here, find the command, right click on it, and say you want to add it. And there it is. Click off. And then if you're looking at this and you're like, this is a mess, well, then instead of right clicking on each one to removing it, to get back to the way it was, the default where you just had save and the undo and repeat and redo, then right click anywhere on it, go to customize, come down here and say you want to do a reset. You want to reset only the quick access toolbar or all customizations. Well, let's just keep it to the quick access toolbar, and it says, are you sure? Of course, yes. And then it doesn't do it yet until you click okie dokie. And we're back to where we started with 3 commands. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add my own commands here to the quick access toolbars, so in later training videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's a couple ways you can go about customizing the ribbon. Like for example, if you want to hide the ribbon because you want to be able to have more viewing space for your document, you can do it quite a few ways. You can either come up here and double click on one of the tabs really fast, double click. It does a hide so you can work on your document and be able to view more of your document. So if you want to be able to bring it back up temporarily, then go ahead and click on the tab to see the ribbon, then go ahead and click on a command or click off and it will collapse again. And if you want to bring it back up permanently so it doesn't collapse, then go ahead and double click really fast on a tab and it's back up, so when you click off it doesn't disappear. You can do it that way, or you can use the shortcut keys, Control F1, and it collapses. Control F1 again brings it back up, or you can come up here and click on the ribbon display options, and you get three options, the least of which is the current option that is selected. You can see it's highlighted. It shows the ribbon tabs and commands all at the same time. Or you can just view the tabs. Again, we did that by double-clicking really fast on the tab, or Control F1. You can also click it here, does the same thing. Bring it back, Control F1. And if I click on it again, the final option is to do a complete hide. So when you click on it, it's gone. But you can bring it back by clicking on its little 3 build ellipsis button. And in fact, you don't even have to come over here to click on it to bring it back. When I click off of it, it hides again. You can just come up here and go to the top, and you can see when you get close to the top, you get that thin blue bar. Click on it, and it brings it back up temporarily. So when you click on a command or click off of it, it hides it again. Or until you come back up here, click on the button or anywhere on the top when you get that blue bar, and then come back to the ribbon display options, click on that, and say you want it back to the way it was by showing both tabs and commands. And there we go. Now, if you want to customize the ribbon in the sense that you want to be able to add an extra tab with your own commands to it, or maybe just add commands in addition to the Home tab in your own group, go ahead and right-click anywhere on the ribbon and say you want to customize the ribbon. You can see I got a list of commands over to the left-hand side, just as we saw in the previous training video on customizing the Quick Access Toolbar. Now we're customizing the ribbon. You can see all the tabs that are displayed here are checked except for the developer. So when I check that and click Okie dokie, there's the developer tab. So by default it's not displayed, but later on if you need to use it, which we will in later training videos, then you want to go ahead and right click and customize the ribbon and check that box. I'll go ahead and uncheck that. And then you've got the Home tab, which is the default tab here when you open up Word. You can see you've got a list of the groups on that tab. If you want to go ahead and customize it, well, guess what? Let me go ahead and expand it. You see how the commands there are faded? When you go ahead and select one, you can't remove it. When you go ahead and try to add a command with the clipboard group selected and click on Add, it says that commands need to be added to custom groups. So the defaults here you can't mess with. But if you want to go ahead and add your own group to the Home tab, then you can go ahead and add commands to that. So to add a group to the Home tab, just come down here and click on New Group. There's the new group there. With it selected, you can go ahead and click Rename and give it a new name and call it My Spiffy Group, because everything we do here at Dreamforce is spiffy. And you got up here a symbol that will represent that group. So as you recall in the previous training video, when you right-clicked in a blank area on the group to add it to the Quick Access Toolbar, there was an icon from that group that represented that group. So go ahead and choose one that represents it, like a happy face, and then click OK. So there's the group here on the Home tab. Now with it selected, let's come over here and select a command and click Add. And you can try to double click, but that's not going to work, not when it comes to customizing the ribbon, adding commands to it. So we have to use the Add button. And then just go ahead and add a few, just so we got something to look at. And then before we go ahead and click OK, how about if we go ahead and select a group here, like the font group, and remove it, and the paragraph group, remove it, and the styles group, and remove it. So we're really narrowing down our Home tab to just a few groups here. Let's do the editing, remove that. And now that we butchered the Home tab with just two groups, how about if we add a new tab, click on New, and go ahead and select the tab here and say we want to rename it. Call it the Popular tab because, you know, that's all my popular commands are on that, so I don't have to zip around all over these tabs or have a long list up here on the Quick Access Toolbar. I can just stay on one tab with my popular commands. So click OK. And we've got one group here. You can add another group or as many groups as you want. Go ahead and select it, rename it, and call it. Go ahead and select an icon to represent that group if you add it to the Quick Access Toolbar, like the microphone for Groupies. And then how about Groupies 2 rename? And go ahead and rename it, call it Groupies 2. And we can have the butterfly and click Okie dokie. And then add some commands with it selected, like grow font, add. This one, draw a table, just adding a few so you can see what it looks like after I click Okie dokie. And in fact, let's go ahead and deselect like the Review, the View tab, because you can see the review and view tabs are there, but when I click OK, they'll be gone. And then we'll have our home tab with just 2 groups, and then we'll have our popular tab here with 2 groups as well. So let's go ahead and take a look, a gander as it were. Okie dokie. Whew, that home tab sure was cut back. We've got our original clipboard group, and then we have my spiffy group. And then we created a new tab that was called popular, and it's right there. So if I wanted to be able to have popular, not the second tab, but maybe the home tab, you can go ahead and give it a right click and customize the ribbon. And go ahead and use your up or down arrows to say that the popular will now be the first tab, and click okie dokie. And there we go, popular, then the home tab. And then as you recall, when you right click to add one group, or right click in a blank area of the group, to add that to the quick access toolbar, we chose an image to represent that group, so when I add it, it's a happy face. And then for the popular tab, groupies 1, when I right click, was the microphone. When I add it to the quick access toolbar, there we go. Click on it, there's the command. Click on happy face, that represents that group. And then grow font, add it, it's the butterfly. Ooh, that's fancy. And of course, you can go ahead and right click to remove those from the quick access toolbar. You can right click to customize the ribbon again. And you'll notice that you got blog posts and other tabs here that are checked but aren't being displayed yet. That means when you actually execute a feature or working on something, there'll be contextual related tabs that are available that will pop up when we're ready to use them. And so if we don't want them available when we start working with those other features in Word, then you can go ahead and of course uncheck it. And then if you really made a butchery like I did of my ribbon, I'm like, help, restore, restore, and then come down here and click on reset and reset all customizations. Or if you just want to reset the home tab, then select the home tab and click reset, and then you get the first option to reset only the selected tab. Click okie dokie and then click OK, and then go to the home tab. All the groups are back to where they were. We don't have the additional group, but we still have our other one, the popular tab. So if I right click again, customize the ribbon, and I say no, you know what, let's just do all of it, and click yes, it does everything. Not only does it do the ribbon, but when I click OK, it also updates my quick access toolbar where I had the save as and the open commands. If you rewind the video, you'll see it there. Those are gone too. So it went back to the original state of the ribbon and the quick access toolbar. There are a couple ways you can go about creating a new blank document, the least of which, as we learned in an earlier training video, was to simply open up Microsoft Word. When you opened it, the default was a startup window. From there, you can go ahead and click on the blank document template, and it'll take you to a new blank document. But if you did what I did, I bypassed that by unchecking in the options of Word to start up in the startup screen, in which case it took me right to the blank document here. In any case, once you have it open, you don't have to close out of it and reopen it to generate a new blank document. Instead, with it open, you can just come up here and click on the File tab, go backstage, down to New, and there you go, blank document. Go ahead and click on it, or you can choose one of these other fine fancy templates, but let me click and drag and scroll back up. We'll stay with blank document number 2. There you go, document 2. Or you can come down here with Word open, one of its corresponding Word buttons, and right click on it to get the jump list, and come up and left click on the shortcut to Word 2016, and it opens up document 3. And it'll keep doing that, numbering it sequentially, document 4, 5, 6, and so on. But that doesn't matter, because once you save your document, you can go ahead and rename this generic name to something that's pertinent, well, to what you're writing about in the document below. So let me go ahead and close out of these last 2 of the 3 documents we opened by clicking on the X, or I can come down here and right click on the corresponding button. And it's called a button because when you click on it, it acts like a button, that it minimizes document 2 down to the taskbar. When I click on it again, it restores it. So let me go ahead and right click, and in the jump list, left click on close window, and we're back to our first document, document 1. Now notice that the cursor is flashing not in the upper left hand corner, but just over and down. About how far? Well, if you look at your rulers here, the horizontal and vertical, okay, if you can't see them, let's come up here and click on the View tab, go to the Show group, and check ruler. If I uncheck it, they disappear. Check it, they reappear. And you'll notice that you have your shaded area and the white. The shaded area are your margins or non-working areas. So if you go from 1 over to 0, that's where the cursor's at. so I can't work in that part of the document because that's my left margin. And then as far as vertically, we go from 1 down to 0, that's 1 inch, so I can't work from that point down within the document. And you can see over to the right, I've got my right margin, it's 1 inch from 6.5 to 7.5. When I click and drag the scroll bar down to the bottom, I've got my bottom shaded area, the margin from 9 to 10. So top, bottom, left, and right, they're all 1 inch margins. So wherever my cursor's at, that's where it's going to be dumping the text into when I start typing. So let's go ahead and type in the name of my company, Dreamforce LLC. And then when I want to get to the next line to type in something like a new thought, or in this case, our slogan, which comes after our company name, hit enter. And you'll notice that when I hit enter, it takes it down about 1.5 lines. It's not single spacing, it's 1.5 spacing. And that's the default for every new document that I create. But I can change the defaults, and I can show you how you can do that in a later training video. But let's go on with what we've got here. And we'll type in our slogan, ho ho ho, have we got the right Christmas toys for you? And then when I'm done with that, I can hit enter and maybe hit enter again so I can get more spacing between the company's name and the slogan and what this document's about, or regarding us. And if you make a mistake and you're like, oops, I didn't mean regarding, it's supposed to be about us, then you can go ahead and, well, as you can see when I move my mouse around, you get that uppercase I. It's called the I-beam. Wherever you place that, like if I click at the beginning in front of the R, that's where the cursor goes. So from there, I can hit the delete key because it deletes everything to the right-hand side of the flashing cursor, or if I want to delete everything that's behind it, then I can go ahead and click after the G and hit the backspace key on the keyboard. And then go ahead and start typing wherever the cursor's at. And you'll notice that it adds the text, but also pushes everything to the right side of the cursor over to make way for the new characters here, or letters. And then I can go ahead and click after it, hit enter again. And in fact, if I want to be able to jump right down to, like, let's say the 3 inch on the vertical ruler, I can't click there because it won't take me. And the reason being is because I don't have any available lines. How do I get available lines? Well, every time you hit the enter key, it creates that line. So it's open now, so if I come back up here, I can click there because I already hit enter and it opened up that line. And in fact, to get more technically accurate, let me come up here on the Home tab, go to the paragraph group, and click on Showhide Codes. And it reveals all the codes within the document. For example, every time you hit the spacebar, it adds a little dot when I turn on the Show Codes. And for every time you hit the Enter key, it adds a paragraph marker, or what I referred to as a line that I could place the cursor in. So if I want to get down here and type in something about down at the 3 inch vertical ruler mark, then I have to go ahead and hit enter quite a few times to get down there, don't I? And I can hit the backspace key to go back up, and it gets rid of the paragraph markers, so I can't go back down there unless I hit enter again to open up those paragraphs or lines. Now they're known as paragraphs here, not what we learned in the English class where 2 or 3 sentences make up a paragraph, but according to Microsoft Word, every time you hit the enter key, that's going to generate a new paragraph. So how many paragraphs do I have in my document? Let's go ahead and count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph markers, so 5 paragraphs. And that helps me to identify how much spacing I have in between these paragraphs, what the default is, because if I turn them off, I may have 1 or 2, and if I'm trying to click here and I can't click in between the H and the paragraph marker, that's because I only have 1 paragraph and it's 1.5 spacing. We'll go over that a little bit more in detail, but that's one way to help us out to show the codes to find out where we can place our cursor and how many paragraphs and what constitutes a paragraph. And more importantly, later on when it comes to formatting, like entire paragraphs, where it has maybe 10, 20, 30 sentences or more, again, depending upon if you just have one code here, you can format the entire paragraph and change the alignments in a single click. But I digress. Let's keep it simple. So we've got our spaces here. If I come up and click in between Dreamforce and I have 1 space and I hit the space bar, now I've got 2 dots, 2 spaces, and I can add quite a few more. And instead of hitting the backspace key, I can come up here on the Quick Access Toolbar and say that I want to undo it. Click on the Undo button, and I'm back to where I started with just 1 space. Now that's also important because with some of the font types, if you change it, like from Calibri, and the font looks a little bit tight together so it doesn't look like there's a space in between some words, then you can go ahead and turn on your Showhide codes to see if you actually have a little space there. And by the way, the default font for every new document that I create in Word, if I come up here on the Home tab to the font group, it's going to be Calibri. I can go ahead and change that and update, well, whatever I want to from Calibri to maybe Times New Roman, Arial, and even change the font size. But if I want it a different font size for every new document, like always to be 12, I'll show you how you can change the defaults for that in a later training video. But again, trying to keep it simple here as I introduce this to you, and this becomes a little bit annoying. If you don't want to see the codes, of course, you can go ahead and turn them off. And that way, if you're not used to it, you don't get confused with what you actually type versus what's a code. In any case, let's go ahead and move on. Let's go down to where I can click. I got a paragraph marker there, so it allows me to put the cursor there. And let's see what happens when I type in 3 or 4 sentences, that when it gets over to the far right-hand side where it hits the right margin at 6.5, what Word's going to do to those sentences, instead of cutting it off, it'll actually wrap it around. That is, if I don't hit the Enter key on the keyboard when I get to the end. It'll do what's called a word wrap. So that way it doesn't generate a new paragraph when I get to the end by me hitting the Enter key, but once I hit it, it'll automatically say, okay, we got too much, it can't fit on this line. Let's go ahead and put that onto the next line. For example, now you can see I've got to the end here, or close to the margin, that if I type in anything else, it's close enough that it's going to wrap it around, as opposed to me going at the end saying, well, I'm at the end, let me go ahead and hit Enter to get to the next line. So let me go ahead and type in the next word, which is going to be toys, T-O-Y, and automatically, without hitting the Enter key, it sees that it has no more space at the end when it hits the right margin and puts it on the next line. So let's go ahead and finish typing. And I'm getting to the end here, so I got my next sentence. And type in my name, Kurt, wraps it around without me hitting the Enter key. Now to prove my point, let's go ahead and turn on our show codes to show you that I didn't hit the Enter key when I got to the end of the line, but Word automatically took care of it when it hit the right-hand margin at 6.5 inches here, as you can see up here on the ruler. Come up here on the Home tab to the paragraph group and turn it on. And do you see a paragraph marker at the end of this line? Or that one? Or that one? Nope. So we've got a total of 4 lines that's included in this paragraph. So from that paragraph marker to that one, everything in between is a paragraph. And from that one to that one, everything in between, which is just about us, is a paragraph. And so we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph markers, 5 paragraphs. Not the way that we talked about in the English class, but the way that Microsoft Word sees them. And to just give you a sampling of why it's important that you don't hit the Enter key at the end of your lines and let Word wrapping it for you, here's one example, that when you double-click a word, it selects the word. If you triple-click, it selects the entire paragraph. That means between that marker and that marker, it selects everything with the triple click. So if I came at the end of each one of these and hit Enter, then when I come into one and I triple click, it doesn't select all 4 lines because it just selects everything between that marker and this one right here because it sees everything in between those two as one paragraph. So let me go ahead and hit undo once, hit it twice. Now we're back to 4 lines in one paragraph. Now, having said that, if you do want to be able to break your lines without breaking a paragraph, for example, let me go ahead and turn off my codes here. If I want to be able to have the last few words here on the next line without actually entering in a paragraph by hitting the Enter key, you can do what's called a soft return. So instead of hitting Enter, hold down the Shift key and then hit the Enter key on the keyboard, and that's a soft return, meaning that it forces the text to wrap to the next line, but without breaking its link to the same paragraph for formatting purposes. So if I double-click, I get the word, triple-click. Does it select the line that's above it? Yes, because it still considers that as part of the paragraph, even though it's on the next line, because we did a soft return. Of course, we do have that extra ugly space there. Let me click before the W, hit the backspace key, and then let's go ahead and see what the soft return code looks like as opposed to the paragraph code. Again, Home tab, Paragraph Group, click on Show Codes, and it's right there, that little arrow that's turning in on itself. So at that point it said, go to the next line. We forced it on to the next line. That's a soft return. It still considers that a part of the paragraph. So everything between the last paragraph marker and the one above it, including the soft return, is a paragraph. So if I go ahead and click before it, hit the delete key, then it takes it, pulls it back up. Let me hit the spacebar a couple of times. Looks good. And then let me turn off the codes. Next, if you type in a misspelled word, like I want to type in this, but instead I type in capital T-I-H-S, when I hit the spacebar, Word will do what's called an autocorrect. When I hit the space, it'll tell Word to check the word behind it to see if it's been misspelled. And if it's been misspelled from what it searches for in its database, it'll go ahead and find out what it thinks it is and replace that with the correct spelling. So when I hit the spacebar, voila, you see that? Automatically corrected it from T-I-H-S to T-H-I-S. Now if you're like, wait a second, it shouldn't be this, that's actually the name of my friend who lives down the street, T-I-H-S, then go back over the word that it just automatically corrected, and you'll see this little thin blue line. I don't know if you can see it, but it's underneath the T there. Go ahead and hover over that. Then you get the autocorrect option smart tag that you can go ahead and click on its corresponding drop-down arrow, and you can say, all right, let's change it back to T-I-H-S, or stop automatically correcting T-I-H-S to T-H-I-S, or you can actually look at the autocorrect options. When you click on it, opens up a new window, and when you type in T-I-H-S, it says down below, anytime you type this in, it'll replace that with what's within this column, and it's T-H-I-S. And we'll talk about this in a later training video, how you can customize this and say, okay, look, let me delete it. Let me go ahead and put something else in its place. Let me click cancel and leave that for a different training video. But to keep it simple for this one, it's enough to just go ahead and hover over that blue line, click on it, say change it back, or stop automatically doing this, and then go ahead and continue on typing. And what's hard to miss is this red squiggly line, because according to Word, this is not spelled correctly. So that's its misspelling indicator. We'll talk about that more in a later training video. In any case, let's go ahead and come up here and hit undo so it can go back to T-H-I-S, or I can go ahead and delete it and retype it in again. Oh, and one last thought. If this is something that you don't want to have it misspelled and see red squiggly lines every single time, you can add it to the Word 2016 dictionary, but that's another training video. So let's go ahead and finish our thought here and look forward to those other training videos to get more details about working with our documents. And say, once we're finished, we like our document, you want to make sure you save it. So watch the next training video, because otherwise, if something happens to your computer, you may lose your work. Now, before you get too far along in your document, you may want to save it, because if you have over 50 pages of documentation and you didn't save it, that's going to be toast. And so in any case, before we get too far, let's save it. And to do that, come up here on the Quick Access Toolbar and click the Save button. Now when you click Save, if it's the first time saving your document, it's going to perform a Save As. In other words, the Save As window comes up and it wants to ask you what the new name of the document is going to be, because the generic original document 1 is not doing it for me. And that way I can't identify what this is about, as opposed to changing it to maybe the title as Dreamforce About Us, and also where you want to save it. So to go ahead and save it, click on Save. Again, it opens up and it performs a Save As to ask us 2 questions. Where do you want to save it? Well, let me go ahead and scroll up in the navigation pane and click on Desktop, and then over in the main view on the desktop, I'm going to double click on the Exercises folder because that's where I want to save it. Then down below is the file name. Now it's got the name Dreamforce. Where is that pulling from? Well, let me click and drag that out of the way, and it's pulling right from the first couple words in the document. And so Word thinks that since that's the title, or assumes that's the title of the document, that that's the same name you want to give it for the name of the file. If not, just go ahead and click in it, hit the backspace key, and then just type in what you want to name it. DF About Us. Sound good? Cool. Go ahead and save it. And you can see that you saved it because up on the title bar, it now has your name, DF About Us. Cool, so now it knows its place in society, its name, and also where it's going to live. And that's going to be on your computer, or it could be on the cloud, or on your thumb drive. You choose, that's your flavor. And then once you saved it and you got the name, go ahead and close out of it. And if you're like, I'd like to open up that document again, there's a couple ways you can go about doing it, the least of which is that if you know where it's at, like in the exercises folder on my desktop, double-click to open up the folder. And there it is. Double-click to open up the document. Hey, wasn't that fun? Let's go ahead and close out, close out. The other way is to open up Word. And in here, if you're like, I remember a document I was working on, let me go ahead and open it up from Word. And you can do that one of a couple of ways. You can either go backstage, click on the File tab, and it goes to the Open. That's by default. Recent selected. And if it's one of your recent ones, like either today, yesterday, and well, this is the most recent today, then just go ahead and click on it to open it up. And you can see over to the right, you got the push pin feature, so you can go ahead and pin it. You can see now it's pinned, and the push pin's down, meaning that it will never roll off. So you can open up 20,000 other documents, and those that are more recent will be up at the top, and those that aren't will be dropped off. This one won't because it's pinned. Let's go ahead and unpin it, so it's now part of the group here that can roll off if we don't open it up frequently or as the most recent document. And go ahead and click on it to open it. Cool. And then keep in mind, of course, is that if you move the document from like the exercises folder, let me show you, close out. If I double click, open it up, and restore it down, and click and drag that to the desktop so it's no longer in there, close out, and I open up Word, and I go File, Open, Recent, and I'm like, let me go ahead and open it up. Sorry, we couldn't find it because you moved it. Okay, it doesn't say you. It's not going to blame you, but it was moved, renamed, or deleted. Oh, nuts. So what you can do instead is say, okay, I need to go find it. Go File, down to Open to Recent, and you don't want this sitting there fooling you every time. So you can go ahead and right-click on it and say, let's go ahead and remove it from the list so I'm not tricked again into thinking that it's still in the same place. Or if you later on move it back into the exercises folder, you can click on the link and it'll open it back up. But this time, I'm going to come down here and click on Browse. Now it opens up the open window, and that took a couple of clicks as opposed to closing out, going back, and adding the Open command to the Quick Access Toolbar. Because when you click on that, it just takes a single click as opposed to going backstage and then clicking on Browse to open the open window. So I cut your work in half by a single click by adding the command to the Quick Access Toolbar. So now it's opening in the exercise folder on the desktop. But if we go to the desktop, either by clicking here or coming over here in the navigation pane and clicking on desktop, either way, you're to the desktop. And there it is, DF About Us, double click, and it opens it up there as well. Now, when it comes to saving and opening your documents, if it takes you backstage and you're like, hey, adding that command to the Quick Access Toolbar, the Open or Save As, always takes me backstage and it doesn't go right to the Open window or the Save As, then you want to go backstage to File and change the options by going down to Options and choosing the Save tab, and then come down here and check Don't Show the Backstage when opening or saving files. Then once you check that, go ahead and click Okie dokie, and you won't run into that backstage issue. And then finally, if you want to create a copy of the original document, then you want to perform a Save As, because when you make changes to the document, like, well, let's go ahead and delete one ho, that when I click on Save, it doesn't perform a Save As because we already named it, and we told the operating system where we wanted to save it. It used to be the exercise folder, but we moved to the desktop. In any case, it knows where it's at. So it's not going to do the Save As. But if we want to go ahead and create a copy, then we want to do a Save As so we can get those two questions again. What name do you want to give it, and where do you want to save it? So if we come up here and we click on Save As, there's the Save As window. If I'm going to be saving it to the same place as my original, then give it a new name, because otherwise it'll overwrite the original, and you may not want to overwrite the original. So if I come down here and call this, well, space 2 for DF About Us 2, great, click Save. Or you can keep the same name, but just save it in a different place, like the exercises folder, so it's not overwriting the original. But we'll do number 2, that works for me, click Save. And then up here on the title bar, it's number 2. So if I come down here and I go ahead and I delete the second hoe and click Save, it updates it to number 2. So when I close out and I go back to my desktop, well, there's number 1 or the original one, and here's number 2, that has 1 hoe, and when I double click and open up the original, it's got the 2. So I didn't overwrite it because I made a copy of it by doing a save as and either renaming it or keeping the same name but just saving it in a different place so it doesn't overwrite the original, or you can do both. Save it in a different place and give it a new name. And speaking of which, if I decide to go ahead and go back to 2 ho-hos for the second draft or DF About Us number 2, just go ahead and click on Save As so we can open it up. And then there's number 2. Go ahead and select it so it copies the name down below. Then click Save, and you get your options, the least of which is to replace the existing file. Great. You can go ahead and click OK, or the other options is you can save changes with a different name. So update it, give it a new name, or merge the changes into the existing file. Keep it simple. Replace existing file. We'll talk about merging later on. Click Okie dokie. And so now DF About Us number 2 is open with 2 ho-hos and not 1. And let's go ahead and do Control W to close out of that window. Shortcut keys, or you can come up in the upper right hand corner and click on the X. After you saved your document and you want to be able to forward it on to somebody, like let's say who has an earlier version of Word, maybe Word 2000, before you send it off, you may want to use the Compatibility Checker feature to see if there's any compatibility issues with any objects used in your Word document. Well, like the one that I have here, it's a smart art graphic, and we've got the 3-step process toys. We test them first, play with them, and then if we pass both those steps, we can sell them. So when I send it off, I want to know if that person in an earlier version of Word, Word 2000, if they're able to go ahead and view it. Not only view it, but if they can view it, can they actually click inside of it to make any changes to it? Because maybe I want them to suggest their own steps and delete the text here and replace it. Let me go ahead and click outside of it. And I'll cover the smart art graphics in a later training video, but I needed something right now to show you that's going to have compatibility issues when we use that feature for an earlier version of Word. So to find out if there's any issues, you can do it one of a couple of ways. One way is to come up here, click on the file to go backstage, and info selected by default. Just come down here and click on Check for Issues, and there it is, Check Compatibility. Check for features not supported by earlier versions of Word. Click on it, and it says the following features in this document are not supported by earlier versions of Word. These features may be lost or degraded when you're opening this document in the earlier version of Word, or if you save this document in an earlier file format. So if you just leave it as is and send it off to somebody who has an earlier version of Word like 2000, they may not be able to see it, or it may be degraded, that it may not look as fancy as we thought it would, at least in 2016. And so the issues that it found is down below, gives us a summary. The smart art graphic that I inserted down below will be converted into a single object that can't be edited in earlier versions of Word. And it found 1 occurrence of it. So if I just clean that up, or I acknowledge it and say, okay, they'll be able to see it, but they can't make any changes to it, fine. But if you want to target it and find out if this is just an issue with 2007 or 2003, then come up here and click on Show Versions and say that I want to see just specifically 2010. So if I uncheck the others real quick, you'll notice that it's no longer there. So it's not an issue with 2010. Click on the drop-down arrow. How about also 2007? It's not showing, so the culprit is going to be Word 97 through 2003. Any version, 97, 2000, 2002, and 2003. Because when I uncheck the others, of course, it's still there. So you can do one of a couple things. Either get rid of the graphic here and say, fine, I'll just make sure I only will create a document that doesn't have any compatibility issues, or leave it as is and say, well, they can look at it, but they can't edit it. And then notice down below that it'll check compatibility when saving the documents in the earlier version. So if I go ahead and click OK, it lets me save the file and send it off to the other person who has Word 2000 or 2003, an earlier version. They open it up, they can't click in it and be able to change it, but they'll be able to view the smart art graphic here that's going to be converted into an image, something that they can't edit. And you want to see what it looks like in that earlier version. Let's go ahead and save it to an earlier version. by coming up here, clicking on the Save As button on the Quick Access Toolbar, which I added the command to it so I don't have to go backstage. Click on it, opens up the Save As window, and I want to change the Save As type from the current version, which doesn't say the current version, it just says Word document. Click on it, to an earlier version, and the only other earlier versions that you can save it to that's listed here that defines that earlier version is 97 through 2003. It doesn't say, well, we've got one for 2010, 2007, 2013. That's pretty much all wrapped up in this generic name here. And the reason being is notice the extension at the end, .dlcx, and the end here, .dlc. Before they added the X, which is the XML language or extensible markup language, it wasn't as stable, the files were bigger, and it was more apt to be corrupted. And so that way they cleaned it up after 2003 and 2007 by adding the extra X or that XML language to the documents. And so we can go ahead and say we'll go back to an earlier version that doesn't have that fancy language to keep it stable in a smaller size. And by the way, I call these extensions because they're an extension that comes after the name of your file, after the dot. And if you want to learn more about extensions, then you can watch my Windows training video on extensions, because the extension tells the operating system what program to open up this file in. So if you have a file that you double click on and the operating system says, no, I don't get it. What program opens this up? You tell me. And you're like, I don't know. Well, if you knew it was a document, but for some reason the extension got deleted, then you may want to go ahead and add it. In any case, that's all my Windows training video on extensions. So we can save this to an earlier version, and we'll just call this, and we'll save it to the desktop, click Save. And when we save it, it says, okay, we're going to check it for compatibility issues in case if you missed it, and warn you and say, are you sure you want to continue? Because the SmartArt graphic that's in this document, well, they can see it, but it can't be edited. Well, that's fine. Click Continue, and then it's been converted. So you can see up here on the title bar, it's in compatibility mode when I open it up in Word 2016 because it's an earlier version of Word. So it's basically saying this is what it's going to look like or how it's going to come across to the person who opens this up and tries to click inside here, and they can't click on it because it's been converted into a complete image. So they can view it, but unlike the latest version of Word 2016, they can't edit the text within the SmartArt graphic because the SmartArt wasn't available in those earlier versions. And so if I close out of here, you'll see on my desktop I've got the original document, the extension .dlcx, and then over here, click and drag the converted version when I did the save as and renamed it. And also you can see the extension .dlc. It's missing the X chromosome. In any case, if you don't see the extensions, I show you how to turn on and off those extensions and all the parameters behind that and what to look for in the warnings in my Windows training video, but enough about that. You can also see the difference between the two files because this one's got a more squared W, or this one's been disproportionate. It looks like it's coming out from behind the document. It's the latest icon image for Word 2016, and you can see that when I hover over it, you get the pop-up. When I hover over this one, in the pop-up, it actually says that this is a type of document that was created in one of the earlier versions of 97 through 2003. So when I go back to my original version, double-click, I can click in there and hey, I can edit the text within the SmartArt graphic. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.